Very good. I am calling to order the resumption of the November 10th, 2021 meeting of the Township Committee of the Township of Morris. Please give us a moment. We are trying to find one of our council members in the audience who is having.
He's good, sir.
He's good now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Mr. Gyorfy,
Here.
Mr. Ravitz,
Here.
Mr. Mancuso.
Here, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, you're here. Mrs. Wilson,
Here.
Mayor Grayzel.
Here. Both adequate and electronic notice of this meeting as required by the Open Public Meetings Act has been satisfied and a statement certifying same will be executed. Will everybody rise for the Pledge of Allegiance with me? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. First on the agenda tonight is our approval of minutes for October 20th, both regular and closed. Will somebody move those, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thanks. Tonight we have a recognition and two proclamations. At each of our township committee meetings, we honor a member of the public or group for their accomplishments, contributions, or volunteer work. This past month, we recognized 4 members of the Girl Scout Troop 6163 for their service project of building 3 beautiful book boxes that will benefit our community. And tonight, we are recognizing Morris Township resident Leslie Bensley for her years of service as director of the Morris County Tourism Bureau. Greg, I forgot to ask you, can you move over? Can you find Mrs. Bensley and move her over?
First name?
Leslie?
There's 2 on there, like Greg.
Give us a moment while we move her over for the presentation. Leslie, can you unmute yourself and let us know you're there?
Mute. Okay, how's that, Jeff?
I can hear you now. Very good.
Okay, terrific. Can you see me as well?
Is she on the screen? Can you put her as
She has to undo her, she has to
Okay.
take care of her. video.
Okay, oh, start video. Got it. Okay,
And can you make her? There she is.
hi.
Hi, so nice to
Hello.
see you this evening.
Hello, hello. Here, I'm going to try and find a nice background. How's that?
Okay, very
Okay,
good. Now I see you. Thanks so much. So tonight we are recognizing and congratulating Leslie Bensley. I have a recognition certificate for her that we will deliver to her home. And I would like to read it into the record before we let Leslie say a few words to the public. Whereas Leslie Bensley serves as Executive Director of the Morris County Tourism Bureau and has done so for the past 24 years. From the beginning, her goal has been to put Morris County on the map where it rightfully belongs, owning to its illustrious history and culture. And whereas in 2010, Governor Corzine appointed Leslie to serve as the governor's task force for heritage and tourism, where she served as vice chair. The task force established the Heritage Tourism Plan for New Jersey, which serves as the state roadmap for heritage tourism and development. And whereas Leslie served as the treasurer of the Advocates for New Jersey History, board member of the Crossroads of the American Revolution Heritage Area, co-founder of NJDMO. I'm not sure what that stands for, Leslie, so you'll have to tell us. Oh, it says a coalition of New Jersey destination marketing organizations and a board member of the New Jersey Travel Industry Association. And whereas the Morris County Tourism Bureau is a 501c6 nonprofit destination marketing organization that positively affects the economy of Morris County by promoting the area's exceptional historic, cultural, and recreational opportunities by providing services to residents, businesses, travelers, and tourists. And whereas MCTB marketing efforts have won numerous awards from the New Jersey Division of Travel and Tourism. In 2011, it received the Pinnacle of Excellence Award for a creative campaign that connected Gustav Stickley exhibit at the Newark Museum with the Morris County National Historic Landmark Site, the Stickley Museum at Craftsman Farms. And whereas Leslie received the 2013 Award of Recognition from the New Jersey Historical Commission for a longtime support, advocacy, and promotion of Morris County's history and historic sites. And whereas Leslie and her family lived in London and Tokyo before returning to Morris Township 28 years ago. And she and her husband, Charlie, share and their two children, Eliza and Sam, are Morris Township residents, a longtime member of the Kellogg Club. She is a book leader and a member of the Garden Club of Morristown. She is a group leader and a member of the Garden Club of Morristown. And whereas Leslie's dedication to promoting Morris County and its rich history, recreational opportunities, and cultural experiences have made her an incredible asset to Morris Township and the neighboring communities, and her legacy as the executive director of the Morris County Tourism Bureau will not be soon forgotten. Now, therefore, may it be resolved by the mayor and members of the Township Committee on behalf of the citizens of this great municipality, by individual hand and seal, recognize and extend our congratulations and best wishes to Leslie Bensley. Let's get a virtual round of applause.
Congratulations.
Yes, I don't know how many years ago, Leslie, you and I first met. It's been a long time, and we actually live somewhat in the same neighborhood. But so happy to have you as part of our community. Thank you for everything that you've done. Let me turn it over to you for a few words.
Well, firstly, Jeff, thank you so much. This is an unexpected pleasure. And I knew that you did this because I have several colleagues that you've lauded before me, and I never thought that this would even occur. So thank you so very much for this thoughtful and very meaningful proclamation and recognition that you're giving me this evening. I want you to know that before I was Leslie Bensley, I was Leslie Thorson, and I dated a boy, Charlie Bensley, who lived in Morris Township. So Morris Township has always been something that I knew about and was very happy to leave New York City to visit his family on Kadena Road. And it was just something my husband said when we're moving back to the United States, that he wanted to live in an area very similar to where he grew up. And sure enough, we moved less than a mile away in Morris Township to where Charlie grew up as a young boy. So it's very meaningful to me. And I hope that through my work, although I have been promoting 39 towns, I think that the greater Morris Township area really has been the focus of most of our marketing, because obviously the jewels and the crown reside here. And to be leaving at a time when the Morris Museum has now been named the first New Jersey Smithsonian affiliate is very, very exciting. And so I will look back very fondly at the work that I've done trying to leverage the great history, culture, and recreation that we have here. And I hope to become more involved in the Morris Township community because I will now have some free time. So with that, I thank you and I wish you all well in your meeting this evening. And again, thank you so very much indeed.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Let me add something. I always say that our town is such a wonderful place to live for so many different reasons, and we go through them each and every month. One of them is the wonderful history that we have, and it's one of the reasons why I purchased my house where it is in Washington Valley, because of the history and the work that you've done to promote the historical nature of Morristown and Morris Township and the surrounding areas has been a boon to all of us. And it benefits our community so greatly to have the history of what's taken place here to be known to so many people. So
Absolutely.
It's been a great job.
Well, thank you, Jeff. And the fact that you are meeting democratically this evening in a constitutional government because of General George Washington and the Great American Experiment succeeding. I think we never should lose sight of that. So thank you, George Washington, and thank you, committee.
Very good of you to bring it back to day one, to day one of our country.
Day one.
Do any
Okay.
members of the township governing body have any words they'd like to say?
May I, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Mancuso, go ahead.
Leslie, it's Peter Mancuso.
Hello, Peter.
We've been friends for a very, very long time. I've always
sir.
admired you and your work, and I'm so pleased that we can give you this recognition. And I hope when something comes up of some real consequence, that maybe you'll be involved again in maybe a different way. Thank you so much for
Absolutely.
everything, ma'am. We appreciate
Well,
it.
Thank you, Peter. I appreciate that.
And I'll just add to that how much I appreciate everything you've done to inspire everybody's interest in our local history. I know the Tourism Bureau, the Washington Association, the July 4th festivities, and so many other things. I just really appreciate all that you do. And thank you so much and congratulations.
Thank you very, very much indeed. And they will go on. I have every hope that our heritage programming, our partnerships, that I've sowed a very good foundation for the future. So that's the goal of any job, right? To enjoy it, do it well, and hopefully have it live on beyond you. So thank you very much, Kathy.
Leslie, this is Bud Ravitz. I just want to say thank you for all the hard work and the many years of service that you've put into the community. I really did appreciate hearing your story about your time here in the township. And I was especially thrilled when I learned a couple of years ago that the Morris Museum was the first New Jersey affiliate of the Smithsonian. I thought that that was such a prestigious thing. And I'm sure that you and all the folks in the county had, a lot to do with that. So thank you for that. And thank you for the great story. And thank you for your service.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you, sir.
And Leslie, this is Mark Gyorfy. I just want to say thank you as well, to echo everyone's comments. One thing I will note, I too grew up right by where your husband grew up. I remember the Bensley's house back there in the woods before when I grew up on Alexandria Road. It's unfortunate that the old mansion with the nuns and the Bensley's house isn't there anymore, but have vivid memories of that growing up, and I can totally relate to what both you and your husband said about living in Morris Township and the reasons why you love it. So thank you for all of your hard work.
You're welcome. And just a little factoid is the name of the mansion was Wheat Chief, hence why the name of the development is Wheat Chief. And the Kissels who lived in Wheat Chief, she was one of Commodore Admiral, she was a Vanderbilt. She was one of the Vanderbilt granddaughters. So it was a great area to live in. And I'll just quickly say that when Charlie was a young man, it was only the folks at Foster Fields that were Carolyn Foster was his only neighbor for the longest of time. So, all right, you all. Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie.
Good night.
Thank you, Leslie.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. Great. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jeff. Thank you so
Very
much.
good. We're going to continue with our agenda. We have two proclamations this evening. The first is for Veterans Day, which is tomorrow, November 11th. I have this framed proclamation that I will be presenting to the Veterans Committee tomorrow. I invite the public to come to our ceremony, which takes place 10 a.m. in front of our municipal building, and will continue at 11 a.m. on the green in Morristown. So please join us tomorrow for the special day. We also have on the agenda, where did it go? We have a proclamation for Native American Heritage Month. I'd like to say that in the United States, heritage months are periods within the year that are designated to celebrate and acknowledge various ethnic and marginalized groups. These are times not only to celebrate, but also to educate others on various groups' histories and contributions to American history. These are important times that help us understand some of our own cultures and identities, as well as others. And the reason I like to do these is because you look around and see so much divisiveness in our country these days. And I continue to believe as a person that we have so much more in common than we do have differences. And I believe that by acknowledging the heritage of various groups within our community, my hope is to bring a better understanding to everyone about what we all contribute to this great fabric that we call New Jersey. So earlier this year, we recognized Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, as well as Hispanic Heritage Month. And tonight we are recognizing Native American Heritage Month. And I would like to now read portions of it into the record because it is fairly long, but you can read the rest of it online. Whereas Native Americans and Alaska Natives are people descended from the original peoples of the North, South, and Central America who maintain tribal affiliation or community attachment. And whereas celebrating National Native American Heritage Month, we affirm our commitment to remember those contributions and to honor the unique heritage of our continent's first inhabitants. And Native Americans were the first peoples to cultivate food such as corn, potatoes, squashes, and pumpkins, and to develop useful plants such as cotton, rubber, and tobacco. I'll skip down. I just want to make sure everybody knows that the historical documents show that the present land day in Morris County was purchased from the Lenape Indians in 1684. I will leave the rest of this resolution proclamation for everybody to read online, which will be on our website. But I'm very happy to recognize that this month. Okay, moving on our agenda, we have our first section of public commentary and inquiry. At all our meetings, we have two sections where people can make comment or ask questions of the Township Committee. The first is at the beginning of the meeting. The second is after we do all our business, if there are any follow-up questions. So I will now open it up to the audience to ask any questions prior to us doing our business of this evening. And like I said, again, after we do, I know many people are here to hear the resolution or the introduction of the ordinance relating to the Honeywell and Red Bull's proposal. That's coming in a few minutes. If you can hold those comments until the end of the meeting, that would be great until we get through that portion of the meeting. But if there's anybody else who has other questions, you can raise your hand now. And I see Mr. Tabor. Yes, we are going to get to the Locust Street ordinance as well this evening when we're going to have a public hearing. So I assume that's what you are raising your hand about. We'll get to you, I promise. Mrs. Barrett. Yeah. So Betty Barrett, can you unmute yourself? Betty, are you there? Maybe we'll try again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Good evening, Betty.
Oh.
Can you state your name and address for the record, please?
Okay. I was on mute. I didn't know that. Betty Barrett, 5 Loman Road. And I live near the intersection of Columbia and Park Avenue. And I wondered if there was any update on the progress that the DOT is making on the configuration of the intersection. Last I heard, they were going to go back to the drawing board.
Yeah, as far as I know, there is no update. We are trying to get do you have an update, Mr. Quinn?
I do not, sir. Other than it's the design was being turned over to the county, the county of Morris taking that.
Yeah, so right, the design phase was being turned over after NJDOT did their work. They were turning over to Morris County, but due to the passage of time, we I believe they missed out on some funding from the federal government. Maybe there's more coming with the infrastructure bill. There's been no progress that we know of on what's happening there. We've been trying to get a meeting together with the county commissioners to talk about the concerns of Morris Township. We haven't been able to do that yet, but we're hopeful of getting a meeting. But there's been
May I
no
make
movement.
I would add there is an effort going on the part of some of the mayors of surrounding towns to move that meeting forward and get it set up, but it is not set up yet, to my knowledge.
Yeah, so
Do you know if they're looking at having an exit right onto the property? Is that still a viable solution? Especially now with the Red Bulls coming, we're going to have a lot more traffic.
well, we'll get into the traffic later. We think that the Red Bulls is not going to generate a whole lot of traffic. We're hopeful, but there has been no progress, like we said, on discussions about any alternatives other than the one that had been proposed. And we are looking to set up that meeting with the county to express our concerns.
Well, the one that was proposed is not popular.
And
We didn't
part,
like that
a major purpose of the meeting that people are attempting to get set up is to share information about the status of, what's going on. Because there are questions and answers hopefully could be provided at a meeting of officials from surrounding towns.
Okay, there is some construction going on at the site, but I am assuming that's from Hanover. Is that correct?
Do you want to answer that, Mayor?
Sorry, I couldn't hear that question.
There is construction going on at the site, but I assume that is from the Hanover ordinance. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, Hanover did approve something for that site at the old bank building. They've been doing some clearing of the lands. I don't believe that they have site plan approval yet. but
Yes,
they've
they
been-
do. It
They do have
has.
site plan approval? Ah,
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
there's a lot of trucks over there doing some work, so, but you say that's not been approved yet?
no, it has been, I was wrong. It does have site plan approval.
Okay,
And just so you know, that is the last parcel in Hanover Township before the Florham Park border. So that parcel is the border between Florham Park and Hanover, and Morris Township obviously is across the street on the other side of Park Avenue.
so we have nothing to say about that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's another municipality.
There was public hearings.
Yeah, and there were public hearings in Hanover where the members of the public could be heard.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Betty. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Okay,
Do we have anybody else on the list? Seeing none, okay. Will somebody move that we close the public portion?
So moved.
Thanks, all in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Very good. So next we have ordinances for introduction. We have 3 ordinances tonight. The first ordinance is 2721. Mr. Carlson, can you read that into the record, please?
Sure thing, Mayor. Ordinance 2721. This is an ordinance amending Chapter 95 zoning of the Code of Ordinances of the Township of Morris. This is amending the OL 40 Office and Research Laboratory Zone, allowing for a non-residential overlay district.
Very good. And as many members of the community have heard, the Red Bulls soccer team has made a proposal to purchase the two lots that are up there. One is a 65-acre lot and another is a 16-acre lot, and combine them into a training facility for the Red Bulls. This ordinance would allow us or allow that project to move forward. It's currently an office as an OL 40 office and research lab. This ordinance sets the metes and bounds for what would what would be what would be allowed on that property. There's a process that we have to go through before we get into the planning stage of this. Let me turn it over to Mr. Carlson. Can you review the steps in the process, please, before we?
Sure, Mayor.
Yep.
So tonight is simply the introduction of the zoning ordinance. There's no public hearing or anything of the sort tonight. It's simply introduced into the record, and then notice is provided to the public informing that this was introduced. Separately, the planning board is going to need to take some action here too. Ultimately, what needs to happen is they need to review this introduced ordinance and declare that it's consistent with the existing master plan. Now, of course, the Red Bulls facility is not provided for in the master plan because it was not known at the time that the master plan was last revisited. So on November 29th, the planning board will be at least asked to take action regarding an amendment of the master plan that would provide for a conceptual zoning similar to what's being introduced tonight in the ordinance. There will be public hearing at that time. I am told that that will take place on November 29th at 7 p.m., that planning board meeting, at which time members of the public can be heard on the master plan amendment. Also that night, subsequent to the master plan amendment, the planning board will then consider the zoning ordinance on first reading and whether or not it's consistent with that master plan amendment, which presumably would or may be adopted by the planning board that night. After that, the ordinance will be sent back to this governing body for public hearing on second reading of the zoning ordinance. Currently, that is projected to take place on December 2nd, 2021. And if necessary, that meeting will be continued to December 8th, 2021. At which time the public can be heard on the zoning ordinance. So again, if there are any members of the public that want to be heard on the Red Bulls, there will be two opportunities to do that. One in front of the planning board, currently scheduled for November 29th, but watch this space to make sure that that comes through. You can be heard on the master plan amendment, and then currently scheduled for December 2nd and possibly the 8th, always subject to change. Watch this space again. Public hearing on the zoning ordinance that's being introduced tonight.
Very good. And in addition to that, one of the actions we took this year is putting in some rules and regulations around land use development in this town and redevelopment, an effort put forward by Deputy Mayor Gyorfy. And one of those items that we put in our list of what we'd like to see is information sessions held by the applicant, a private information session where they can speak directly to the residents outside of the hearing proceedings. And the Red Bulls have agreed to do that. They are having a public meeting on Wednesday, November 17th, a week from tonight at the Westin Governor Morris Hotel at 2 Opening Road from 7 to 9 p.m. This is an in-person meeting only. So again, mark your calendars a week from tonight. This is a public meeting being held by the Red Bulls to inform the public of what their proposal is. And they'll go into details then. Like Mr. Carlson just said tonight, this is purely an introduction of the ordinance. The first public hearing we will have before this governing body is December 2nd at a special meeting that we've already scheduled. We have a second special meeting December 8th already scheduled on the calendar in case it goes past December 2nd for additional comments and inquiry by the public. And then we also have our December 15th regularly scheduled meeting if that's necessary to discuss this further. So we have a lot of dates on the books right now to ensure that the public gets all of their questions answered. But again, tonight is just the introduction, and there's no discussion of the ordinance itself this evening. Obviously, we can field any comments later on in the public commentary section. But again, if you ask questions this evening, they will be deferred until December 2nd when we actually have a public hearing where we will have our planner and land use, I believe our land use attorney
Yes, sir,
Well-
and our engineer.
and our engineer will also be present. Everybody will be present here to answer all the questions from the public. So with that, I will ask somebody to move the ordinance, please.
So moved.
Second,
Second, so we will have a roll call now of ordinance 2721. Madam Clerk?
Mayor, I had a question before we vote. Are you going to defer members of the committee to make their comments on this introduction during our normal commentary, or would you invite that now?
Oh, sure. That's a good idea. Go ahead.
Okay.
I'll let you kick it off.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I did just want to provide some commentary before the ordinance introduction. So thank you, Mayor, for the time. I wanted to just provide an overview, if you will, of some of the land use efforts we've had in Morris Township to ensure our residents have as much of a voice as possible. Earlier this year, I authored in the Township Committee unanimously passed a land use reform package codifying the Township Committee's redevelopment policy and advocating for reforms at the state level to provide residents with more transparency and notice. It is important to make clear that the ordinance we are introducing tonight is not the same as a redevelopment ordinance, which is a legislative vehicle that we reformed. But to me and our residents, that might as well be the same thing. While technically tonight's ordinance does not fall under the direct purview of our land use reform efforts, I am pleased that the prospective developer, our township professionals, and key stakeholders have worked as much as possible to honor the precedents we set in this reform effort to mimic the process we have prescribed as closely as possible. To be specific, I would like to lay out how this process achieves much of what we set out for. Our reform package calls for at least 21 days notice prior to an initial public hearing. In this case, the public hearing is scheduled for December 2nd, and the notice will achieve that benchmark. I would have preferred this announcement to have been made earlier in October before this introduction, but unfortunately plans, documents, and communications from the prospective developer could not be completed in time. As called for in our reform efforts, notice is being provided to those beyond 200 feet of this property, which is the minimum required by the state. We have set the best practice here in Morris Township that our notices will go beyond that to neighborhoods surrounding the area, not just to those living directly on its border. The developer will be hosting a public information session, as the mayor just stated, before our public hearing in December. Our residents will have an opportunity to review the plans and ask questions directly to their planners, which is a key initiative that we had pushed from our governing body. The Red Bulls have provided frequently asked questions for residents to review before their sessions, which provides educational value for our residents so they can show up to the information session and to the public hearing with as much information as possible so they can answer the best questions possible. The Township Committee is also committed to not holding a vote on our initial hearing date on December 2nd to ensure our members have time to deliberate and factor in our neighbors' feedback. That was also a key point of our reform efforts, and I'm very pleased that we'll be doing that. So in summation, while the process is not perfect, I would personally prefer the legislative process's timeline to extend longer. However, I do understand that the opportunity presented to us with this proposal to avoid 5 commercial buildings being built on that property as it's currently zoned for. I'm thankful for the willingness of the Red Bulls and their team to meet our best practices standards and for our professionals for implementing. So I'm looking forward to the public comment, but thank you, Mayor, for providing this opportunity for me to speak.
Very good. Thank you for asking for it. And Mr. Gyorfy just mentioned, and I failed to mention, that there is some information on our website. I will show you on my other phone here that if you look for this icon on the Morris Township website, it's a message to residents regarding the Red Bulls under the Township Highlights section, and you click on that. You will find a message to the residents if you haven't seen it yet, and in there are a link to the frequently asked questions. There's a link to the project proposal from the Red Bulls. So that is available on our website. If you can't locate this document, give Town Hall a call and we will direct you on how to find it. Does anybody else on the Township Committee have any comments at this time?
Yes,
Yes,
Mayor.
Mayor, I just wanted to kind of circle back to what Deputy Mayor Gyorfy had stated in that, you know, this governing body, your governing body, is committed to open and transparent government. And I want to say that, you know, we are going above and beyond, you know, what is legally mandated by the state for our residents, and no decision is going to be made, until all the residents have gotten a chance, who want to be heard, have gotten a chance to speak. So, kudos to the mayor, the deputy mayor, and my colleagues on the dais, for allowing this to go forward in this manner. So I just want to thank the members of the public who are going to be voicing their opinions for, against, or ambivalent. Your voices do matter, and we look forward to hearing you.
Thank you. Ms. Wilson, did you have a comment?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Just to piggyback a little bit on what's been said, we have worked really hard on at our level, on the township committee level, to do everything we can locally to improve how land use issues are handled in our town. Different land use situations are governed by different state laws, which make the whole process sometimes complicated to implement and confusing to understand. Unlike recent situations that we're all familiar with, like the Abbey and the 340 Mount Kimball Hotel project, this application from the Red Bulls is not a development proposal, and different legal requirements do apply here. The process we're embarking on in the next couple of weeks is basically, as I understand it, a zoning change proposal that's handled primarily through the township committee with important supplemental action by the planning board. I want the public to know we are doing everything we can, on the one hand, to comply with all the state level legal requirements we have to follow, and on the other hand, to make whatever local level improvements we can so that the entire process is as transparent, understandable, and user-friendly to residents as possible. For example, Deputy Mayor Gyorfy mentioned the notifications. We're notifying of the public hearing 21 days in advance instead of the 10-day requirement that's in New Jersey law. We're sending the notifications not just to people who live within 200 feet, but also to people who live in surrounding neighborhoods, but are outside the 200-foot radius. The one area that's been a little confusing to me is the planning board actions. I'm glad that Mr. Carlson explained that in a little more detail tonight. I encourage anybody who's interested in that to tune in to our meeting, the regular meeting of the planning board next week on the 15th. The process that will be undertaken on the 29th will be explained more thoroughly to the planning board and to the public at next week's regular meeting. And overall, big picture, I think this proposal has a lot of merit for our community. It's definitely worth considering and discussing more thoroughly in the days and weeks ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Mancuso?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would reiterate and indicate that I feel very, very comfortable in the comments that I've heard from my colleagues. I give Deputy Mayor Gyorfy a tremendous amount of credit for himself and his committee for working on the proposals that we have been speaking about earlier. I look forward with great anticipation to the public commentary on where we are and what we're doing here. It seems in the absence of any major negativity, it seems like the right direction, but I think all of us have an open mind, and we will listen to whatever the public, not whatever they have to say, but most of what they have to say, and formulate our decisions from there. So I'm just looking forward to that public session, those public sessions. Thank you, sir.
Very good. And I also wanted to point out the other piece of information that's available on our website is the actual ordinance itself. If you go to the Agenda Center, click on the Township Committee agendas and click on the November 10th agenda. What you'll see, again, I'll show you my phone. I don't know how much you can see it, but there are blue highlights. You can't see it. It doesn't come up. Anyway, there are blue highlights at each section at the header. And if you click on ordinances introduction, it's highlighted in blue. If you click on that, the ordinance will come up. So you can view a copy of the ordinance on the township website there. Okay, I made a valiant effort to show the public exactly how to do that. So with that, we have a first and a second, and I will ask Madam Clerk for a roll call, please, on ordinance 27-21.
Mr. Gyorfy,
Yes.
Mr. Ravitz,
Yes.
Mr. Mancuso,
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson,
Yes,
Mayor Grayzel.
Yes. And again, the public hearing on ordinance 27-21 will occur on December 2nd. Prior to that, there is a meeting of the planning board where they're going to do a master plan consistency review for this ordinance and amend the master plan appropriately for us to move forward on December 2nd. Okay, next on the agenda, we have ordinance 28-21. Mr. Carlson, can you read that into the record, please?
Thank you, Mayor. This is an ordinance amending Chapter 88, Vehicles and Traffic, Article 2, Parking, Stopping and Standing, Section 2.10, Parking Time Limited on Certain Streets, and Schedule 8, Time Limit Parking to amend hours for parking on Western Avenue. This would allow 15-minute parking only between the hours of 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. on Western Avenue.
Very good. And this ordinance came about because of the discussions regarding ordinance 26-21, which we're going to come to in a moment, which is regarding Locust Street and the parking in the area. It was brought to our attention by some of the residents that the 15-minute parking that we have on Western Avenue for the use of patrons of Stephanie's Deli. For those of you who know Stephanie's Deli, there are approximately 6 public parking spaces on the street that are regulated as 15-minute parking only, but it was 24 hours a day, and obviously we didn't need that. So to help out with parking in the area overnight, in the overnight hours, we are now changing that ordinance to allow the 15-minute parking only between the hours of 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. And for the rest of the hours of the day, it will be available for public parking for the general public, and people can use that for overnight parking. So that was in response to a couple, like I said, a couple of resident comments relating to 26-21. So can I have a motion to move 28-21, please?
So moved, Mayor.
Second.
Very good. Does anybody have any comments? Seeing none, I'll ask
Mayor,
for-
I'd like to just quickly state that one of the reservations or the questions that I had at the last month Township Committee meeting was a parking issue for residents, and this ordinance amending the 15-minute parking for during the business hours, allowing for overnight parking, goes a long way to helping alleviate some of the parking issues that residents might have, with overnight. So I think that we've come a long way with this, and I want to thank everybody for their flexibility on it.
Very good. Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll ask for a roll call, Madam Clerk, on 28-21.
Mr. Gyorfy,
Yes.
Mr. Ravitz,
Yes.
Mr. Mancuso,
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson,
yes,
Mayor Grayzel.
Yes. And the second reading and public hearing of 28-21 will occur at our regularly scheduled December 15th meeting, not at the special meeting on December 2nd. So this one will have a recall date of December 15th, 2021. Next on the agenda, ordinance 29-21. Mr. Carlson, can you read that into the record, please? Sky, I think you're on mute again. You have to start again.
So sorry, Mayor. This is an ordinance appropriating $300,000 available in the general capital fund balance for the removal of underground storage tank, relocation of emergency generator, and installation of above ground storage tank, including equipment, materials, and professional services associated with the project. This is for the removal of the underground storage tank located at police headquarters.
Very good. And while I do have an understanding of this one, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Quinn to give the specifics of what's going on there at police headquarters.
Thank you, Mayor. We have for a long period
Tim,
of time.
speak into the microphone.
Any better? Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's better.
That's better.
For the police department has a regular gasoline underground storage tank. Tank there is an 8,000 gallon tank that has been in place since 1978. There are some New Jersey DEP and EPA regulations. Because of the age of it, we would have to do significant upgrades to the tank or to replace it. We think it's prudent in discussions with our engineering department to remove that tank and then replace it with an above ground storage tank. As you know, underground storage tanks can be environmentally issues if they have leaks or anything else, causing significant amount of dollars for the cleanup for that. So it's the recommendation to move the underground storage tank. We have to relocate the emergency generator approximately 2 feet away from the building and then install a above ground storage tank adjacent to it for this. Because of the urgency to get this done and be compliant, it is recommending for the funding. There has been some funding put in place, and then this project would move forward if approved by the governing body with the design work and the bid spec going out in early 2022.
Very good. Thank you. And to state the obvious, the reason why we have an oil storage tank at police headquarters is because we need to fuel our vehicles.
Yes, it serves not only the police department, but the municipal fleet as well.
Very good. Thank you. Will somebody move 2921, please?
I will do that, sir.
Second.
Very good. Any questions or comments before we vote? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, roll call please on 2921.
Mr. Gyorfy,
Yes.
Mr. Ravitz,
Yes.
Mr. Mancuso,
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson,
Yes.
Mayor Grayzel.
Yes. And just like 2821, this ordinance will have a second reading and public hearing on our regularly scheduled meeting on December 15. Okay, next we have ordinances for public hearing and final consideration. We have one on the agenda tonight, 2621. Mr. Carlson, can you read that into the record, please?
Thank you, Mayor. This is an ordinance amending Chapter 88, Vehicles and Traffic, Article 2, Parking, Stopping and Standing, Section 2.2, Parking Prohibited at all times on certain streets, Schedule 1, to add Locust Street, and amending Section 2.7, Parking Prohibited on Snow-Covered Roads, Schedule 6, to remove Locust Street. This is designed to improve access for buses and emergency vehicles.
Very good. So this is a public hearing and we were going to take public commentary on this ordinance. Let's have a first and a second and then we'll open it up.
I'll offer
So
it,
moved.
Mr. Mayor.
Seconded.
Very good. Thank you. So let's see who, if anybody in the public has a comment or a question regarding just ordinance 2621 right now. Please raise your hand. Mr. Tabor.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Good evening.
Thank you very much for your time and for allowing me to speak. My name is Zach Tabor. I live at 9 Locust Street, on the street in question. I spoke at the first reading of the proposed change in ordinance, and I think most of my comments are kind of the same. There are a couple of things. We spoke with some of our neighbors, and there were some other kind of new facts and bits of information that we gathered as well. We're opposed to the measure primarily for the issue of parking. The proposed change in ordinance to change the 15-minute parking outside of Stephanie's outside of business hours helps, but realistically we're talking about, I think, 2 spots as opposed to, or 3 spots as opposed to the, 8 to 10 cars that come from Western that normally park on Locust Street on a regular basis. We're concerned that we understand certainly that the issue of emergency vehicles and school buses, particularly at the intersection between Locust and Western Ave, is something that needs to be visited. But we think that rather than prohibiting all parking on, which I believe is the south side of the street, the side of the street that we live on, and the only side of the street where there is a sidewalk, we don't think that that is the right way to handle the situation. The first thing that we think, which I think is in that recommendation report from the police department, who was the police chief and a lieutenant were generous with their time and speaking with us, is that the current code stipulates that the stop sign should be at least 50 feet from the corner, and it's not currently. And so the no parking from the stop sign should be 50 feet, and it's not currently. It's about 25 feet. So moving that further back from the stop sign would certainly help unclog that that intersection, especially turning right from Western Ave onto Locust Street. And also, I think enforcement on the other side of the street, which is what we're considering, or the township is considering removing parking on that street, enforcing it so that people can't just put their hazards on and stay stopped there, right? If they're waiting to pick someone up or whatever their business might be. So I think it's largely an enforcement issue that is at play. The other thing that we mentioned before is that we're hoping to have kids, and we have a very, very deep concern about the idea of having to park opposite on the other side of the street where there is no sidewalk and there's not even flat ground to get out of the car. We have one of our cars is a little mini subcompact sedan, and even get some of those doors, to get the doors open when you're parked up against the curb, you can't fully get the doors open. So depending on where, on the street you park. That is a really big concern, especially as people fly down that hill. And the fact that now we would be forced to park facing downhill, where we would have to use our rear view mirror in order to see cars coming down the hill to potentially get kids out of a car. We don't think that's good. Another thing that we discovered in speaking with our neighbors is that actually the street was narrowed within the last 10 years in order for the township removed what used to be those old slate sidewalk panels and replaced them with a concrete sidewalk in order to be compliant with ADA requirements. They narrowed the street in order to do that and raised up the embankment so that there would be wheelchair access coming off of the curb. Residents were promised that parking would not be affected as a result of that street being narrowed. So there's two things obviously here. Now parking is being, the proposed ordinance would change that calculus. Definitely. It also has created a part of the situation where, because the street is narrower now, there's more of a difficulty for the emergency vehicles and school buses to get through. And also, I think the township is in a very difficult spot in claiming that they are trying to be compliant with ADA regulations if we're now forcing everyone to park on the opposite side of the street from the sidewalk, where someone who is getting out of a vehicle in a wheelchair now doesn't have access to a sidewalk. So the other thought, we think that a part of it is just really enforcement and removing the parking closer to the intersection. We think that is really a better way to handle the situation. But if there was one side of the street to be removed, we think it would make a lot more sense to be the side that is opposite the sidewalk. I also am personally, I teach and I coach, and I'm a bus driver at Del Barton School here in town as well. And I know that it is much harder to make a right-hand turn in a longer vehicle, a long straight vehicle, not an articulated vehicle like a semi. It's much harder to make a right-hand turn than it is a left-hand turn, because the turning radius, right, you're in the right-hand lane. So for those if it was an emergency vehicle coming out of the fire station, turning left onto Locust Street would be easier than turning right back towards the fire station. And the same would also apply for school buses coming off of Center Ave onto Locust. I don't know if all that makes sense in the abstract, but that's based on my own professional opinion. I don't know if I think those are all of my, we personally would be affected. Obviously there's no room on our lot to build driveways. We currently have about space for 1.5 cars on our driveway. So we have to park on the street every day. And this would, we would be forced to park across the street or across an intersection that people really really speed down because it's kind of Locust Street is a throughway getting from Western Ave towards Burnham Park and, Cadena and that part of Washington Valley, that part of Morris Township. So those are our concerns. We certainly understand that there needs to be some sort of an issue. There needs to be some sort of resolution, for the congestion at Western Ave and Locust Street. But we think that this is not the proper way to do it, and that it will cause more issues for residents on a day-to-day basis than just simply fixing the problem. So thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. I know that's a lot of different points, but thank you.
And we'll address your comments after we hear from other members of the public. Thank you. This, because I think I saw somebody else's hand raised. No, nobody else's hand raised?
No.
Okay, very good. Mr. Gyorfy, would you like to address the concerns of the fire department? What's that? Yes, so we'll move to close the public portion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Very good.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'm happy to provide some comments that'll echo what I provided last month. And Mr. Tabor, Zach and Noel, thank you for the time for talking and meeting with our professionals and myself and other members of the committee. We're your neighbors. I'm very much your neighbor. I'm near. I live near your area, but also I'm a member of the firehouse. And know very firsthand of the challenges of Locust Street with navigating. In fact, emergency apparatus going up and down the street. I do feel very strongly that not only for the safety of those in emergency vehicles or personal vehicles, but the safety of those who live on the street, should there be an emergency where we do need fire apparatus or ambulances there. To ensure safe passage, but also ensure we have enough space to actually operate an emergency scene. I do have concerns with the parking, the limited access to basically just a single lane of traffic, and having done training and working with other companies on the ladder trucks and the equipment that they need, the space that they need to operate. I do feel that very strongly that it's a safety concern to continue having cars weaving in and out of traffic up and down the street. And also it's a safety concern for, just the emergency vehicles waiting for lines of cars in that single lane to get out of the way. But also cars pulling up and not looking, as you stated, making that right onto Locust from Western. So I hear your concerns. I certainly am not shrugging them off. It's a difficult decision for me personally. But this is something that the firehouse has been asking for a long time because of, the volunteer first responders that have been there for decades have had these issues. I know that the fire department itself, the headquarters has looked into it, our police department has looked into it, and I appreciate their review of it with two different studies. But that's, at least for the members of the committee and the public, that's my perspective on the park on Locust. And if there's anything I need to clarify, I'm happy to.
Mayor, I have a question I'd like to ask.
Sure, go ahead.
Deputy Mayor Gyorfy, it is my understanding that the major concern of the fire department is making left turns from Western onto Locust. And is that correct?
That would be an immediate of several. It's getting onto Locust, making a left turn. We could be in a position making a right turn, obviously. It's also coming off of Center. It's also coming down Locust in a single lane of traffic when cars fly up Locust. We're in very heavy, expensive vehicles, and we're not always in the position to be able to stop on a dime for a car that is playing chicken with us, quite frankly, coming up the street, which does happen. I'm not overstating it. I've only been driving for 4 years, but it happens all the time. And I can only imagine what the professionals or the guys before me had to deal with in the years that they've driven. So it's a bunch of issues, Kathy. I also stated the aerial apparatus, if they need to get their outriggers out, if there's a car in the way, they can't do that, and they can't put a ladder truck up if there is, God forbid, a fire on that street or an ambulance needs to get up to the scene, that sort of thing. you also have to keep in mind when an engine does lay in from a hydrant, that supply line is going to take up a tremendous amount of space. And if there's only one single lane of traffic, then you're prevented from having emergency vehicles get closer to that scene. And everyone will have to walk up, or you'll have to drive around, and that'll inhibit our abilities to operate. So there's a multitude of issues, but I think probably the first one, or the one that's most top of mind, is access from Western. But I wouldn't prioritize it that way.
I was just trying to clarify the left turn versus the right turn. It's my understanding that the importance of making the left turn, it's a more frequent challenge than making the right.
If I could, yeah, if I could add, I would think that on an emergency call, when you're flying out of the fire department to get to that call, making that left turn is of utmost importance to do that safely. Coming back from a call, when they're returning from the fire station, they have much more time on their hands and have more time to navigate that right-hand turn. So I can totally understand how the left turn onto Locust is much more important than the right turn back onto Western coming home.
Yes, I agree with that. And I was just trying to clarify that, because that's not what I was understanding from what Mr. Tabor said.
Just to clarify though, when we make the right turn from Locust onto Western to the firehouse, we're basically in the left lane. You have to make a wide turn. You can't cut that corner. So you need the space on the left hand, which is the lane we're proposing, or the side of the street we're proposing to prohibit the parking.
I'll just add also, anecdotally, I drove down the street yesterday at 5 p.m., just before 5 p.m., and there were 4 cars parked on, is the streets east, the side of the streets north and south?
Yeah, Locust Street runs north and south.
It runs north and south, so it's east and west.
That is correct.
Okay, and the east side is towards Morristown, and the west side is towards Chakiala?
That is correct.
Okay, so I drove down and I saw 4 cars parked on the west side of the street, and only one car parked on the east side of the street, which I assume was the Tabor's car because it was parked in front of their home. But the rest of the cars were all parked on the other side of the street, which sort of gave an indication to me that is the side of the street that's more frequently parked. It's just one data point I realize, but that's an anecdotal piece of information that I got yesterday. Also, and not to belittle any of Mr. Tabor's points, which are all very important to him and his family. I totally understand. There are other residents in that area that actually have no parking spots for their homes. I spoke to a couple myself, and opening those spots up in front of Stephanie's Deli, and there are 6 as I counted them. If there were small cars, there might even be 7, but there are at least room for 6 cars for overnight parking in front of Stephanie's Deli. That'll alleviate the need for people who live on Western, who are now parking on Locust and the other side streets to find parking. So that I think will really help too. Time will tell on that point, but I wanted to share those 2 things. Any other comments from Township Committee? So seeing none, I would just like to close by saying I understand. I made the comment last week, or sorry, last month when we had the introduction, that I understand the argument about having parking on the side of the street where the sidewalk is. It does make no sense. But there, and again, to Mr. Tabor's point about crossing the street, there are plenty of places in Morris Township where there are no sidewalks, and people regularly have to cross the street. And there's no sidewalk involved. I totally understand that part, but I have to defer to my professionals. I have to defer to my first responders who are requesting this, who are doing it for their safety and the safety of residents. I totally understand it's an inconvenience for some of our residents, but in the broader view of Morris Township, for the safety of, again, our first responders and other residents who are going to need the fire truck on occasion, I think this is the right thing for us to do. Mm-hmm. And with that, I will ask Madam Clerk for a roll call.
Mr. Gyorfy?
Yes.
Mr. Ravitz?
Safety first, yes.
Mr. Mancuso?
I agree. Yes.
Mrs. Wilson,
Yes.
Mayor Grayzel.
Yes. Actually, I have to read the language. Excuse me one second. I, Jeffrey Grayzel, Mayor, declare the ordinance adopted and finally passed, approve the same, and direct that the clerk publish proper notice thereof in the newspaper and to record the ordinance in the proper place. Next on the, and I just want to let the residents know that we're going to do the resolutions. We have some standing committee reports, and we are going to get to the public commentary inquiry, which is near the end of the agenda. Okay, so next we have resolutions 218 through 227-21. Coming out of closed session, we did not have any additional resolutions to add this evening. So will somebody move 218 through 227-21?
So moved.
Second.
Anybody have any questions or comments before we take a vote? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Mr. Gyorfy,
Yes.
Mr. Ravitz,
Yes.
Mr. Mancuso,
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson,
Yes.
Mayor Grayzel.
Yes. Next, we have general business correspondence as circulated. Will somebody move that, please?
So moved.
Move that, sir.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, very good.
Aye.
Next, we have standing committee reports. And for those of you who are joining us possibly for the first time, our standing committees are the oversight committees for the various functions of our government. Those include oversight of things like finance, police, fire, our sewers, our DPW, but also things like shared services. And so we have a standing committee on energy and the environment. And then we have a transportation advisory committee. So we are all going to give individual reports on anything that occurred this past month to inform the public. So I will start with Mr. Gyorfy.
Thanks, Mayor. Since we're in an abbreviated month, our schedule's changed because of the League of Municipalities Conference. Many of our volunteer committees are actually not meeting this month. We'll be meeting in December. So I do not have any standing committee reports. I don't have anything new to report since the October meeting, since we're a week early this month. But I will say for legislation, I think clearly we've talked about all the ordinances to great lengths tonight, and those would be my reports since those come under my committee of jurisdiction.
Very good. Ms. Wilson, do you have anything to report?
Yes, I have two committee reports, one for the environment and one for personnel. For anyone who may not know, the township has established a new partnership with Grow It Green that allows Grow It Green to hold its winter farmers market at Convent Station instead of at the Morris Museum as it did last year. Opening day for this new location and season will be Sunday, December 5th. There will be a ribbon cutting ceremony at 9:30 a.m. that day. The market will be held Sundays from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. from December 5th through March 27th. And I'm just thrilled that we've been able to work out this arrangement, and I look forward to seeing everyone at the farmers market. I wanted to say a special thanks to Steve Trachtenberg, who is resigning from the Environmental Commission at the end of this year. Steve has been a member of the EC for as long as I can remember. He is really knowledgeable on many different topics. He's been an active contributor on many different activities, and he's not able to continue his membership due to timing conflicts, but I am hopeful that he'll continue participating in certain activities as time permits. And huge thanks to him for his just tremendous contributions to our EC and to our community. Something else people may not know, our Environmental Commission has worked very hard to create a new newsletter that comes out at the end of each month. It's really great. It's packed with great information. And if you haven't done so already, I encourage you to go to the EC's page on the township's website and sign up there to receive the newsletter. On personnel, the Personnel Standing Committee, which this year is Peter Mancuso and myself, we are about to begin interviews of applicants for several of our professional positions. As I explained last month, Every year, the Township Committee appoints people to fill a variety of professional positions. This appointment process, which is traditionally led by members of the majority party of the Township Committee with no formal application or interview requirements, has been going on for decades, if not centuries. This year, we are changing that process. For any new appointments that were made by this Township Committee since 2019, and any new appointments that need to be made going forward, the Personnel Standing Committee will interview a minimum of 3 candidates. This is a really different way of making professional appointments. I find it hard to believe that any other town in New Jersey does this. It's certainly never been done in Morris Township before. Adding these application and interview requirements is clearly, in my opinion, the right thing to do. I'm really proud of what this shows about our leadership and our commitment to the integrity of the appointment process. So to be continued in the days ahead. I also wanted to include here a comment on our newly established Senior Citizens Advisory Committee, which is, it's not a standing committee, but it's a newly established committee that we have just accepted applications for. The deadline was last Friday. We have received more than 20 applications for a committee that has 7 spots. I've reviewed the applications. I'm really impressed by the number of people and the credentials that they bring and the interest they bring to their applications. So I'm looking forward to working with Mr. Mancuso. I believe we have our work cut out for us in the next couple of weeks. We plan to begin those interviews shortly after Thanksgiving and have our recommendations ready for the December 15th Township Committee meeting. That's it for me. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Mancuso, any committee reports?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Just very, very happy that we have passed the ordinance and we're spending the $300,000 to remove the gasoline tank by the police station. I think that's a very, very worthwhile thing. And I'm glad that we had gotten to that as quickly as we could. And the other thing I was just going to mention is that I'm proud to be part of that senior citizens committee that we're looking forward to forming, Ms. Wilson and myself. I think it's going to be just a worthwhile thing. And since both of us are barely, as I've said this before, since both of us are barely senior citizens, we'd like to really get the opinion of those people who have been around for a while. So I thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Ravitz, any committee reports?
Just one, Mr. Mayor, Parks and Rec. I just wanted to let folks know that the renovation of the Ginty tennis courts is well underway and they should be reopened well before the next tennis season begins. We've got a couple of events coming up in November for Parks and Rec. There's a 1980s themed family roller skate night on November 30th at Florham Park Roller Rink. There's some prizes and giveaways, and your fees include skate rental and some food items. Also coming right up this week is the New Jersey Devils Night, and there are group packages that are available. I always encourage people to visit the Parks and Rec website to view the current brochure. In this case, it's the fall brochure, and also scroll through the events sponsored by the department for the latest on the upcoming events for the residents of all ages. And always, we have many volunteer and scout project opportunities. Any person or group looking to get involved in enhancing the township parks and recreation facilities can always find a worthy cause in trail projects and environmental improvement projects or general park improvement projects. So, you know, if you're looking to help make a difference, here's a way to do it. And that's it for me, Mr. Mayor, right now.
Very good. Thank you. And I have 2 committee reports myself. One is for the sewer committee. We have a laboratory at our sewer plant that conducts numerous tests of the effluent in our system. We had put aside money in the capital budget this year to upgrade those lab facilities, and we recently put that job out to bid. Unfortunately, we only got one bid back and the bidder did not meet certain criteria. So we're going to have to put that job back out to bid again. And likely this will need, we will need to postpone this project until 2022 to upgrade the laboratory at the sewer plant. With regards to shared services, I've mentioned a number of times through the last couple of years about this great project that we have underway with 5 other municipalities looking at sharing of our Department of Public Works equipment. We received a grant. For the members of the public that don't know, we received a grant from the state of New Jersey to conduct the study, and we hired a consultant for our working group of 6 towns. We received a consultant's report for the first phase of the evaluation of the DPW equipment in each of the towns in the working group. This is just the first of 6 phases in this shared services project assessment, but I'm happy to report that we are nearing the completion of the phase 1 assessment and the project is moving forward. This is a way that, again, by sharing services, we can save taxpayer dollars. In this case, by buying fewer pieces of equipment across 6 towns and just sharing them. So we're trying to reduce expenses. Again, it affects our budget. Okay, now we're going to go back around the horn with just general committee commentary. So Mr. Gyorfy.
Thanks, Mayor. Keep it brief. One's a reminder, tomorrow's Veterans Day, a reminder of the service we have here on the Township Municipal Building tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. And I encourage all members of the public to join. I did just want to note, we talked about the gas tank replacement, which is definitely necessary, but also like to highlight that Morris Township is not only going to be reliant on gas, we'll be installing electric vehicle charging stations at the municipal building, as well as at Streeter Pool down the road. And we look forward to having our first electric vehicles in our municipal fleet in the near future. So while we do have to replace this gas tank, that is not the only source of energy that we'll be relying on. So I'm glad to say that. And thank you to the committee and to our professionals for all the work on that. Lastly, kudos to you, Mayor, for all your work with shared services. This update from the consultant is a huge milestone, not only for the township, but to be an example for the state of New Jersey. More work like this has to be done if we're going to be serious about keeping New Jersey affordable. This is just another example of Morris Township leading by example. And thank you to your work on pushing this forward. That's all I have tonight.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Gyorfy. Ms. Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor. Speaking of our Historic Preservation Commission, I would like to thank Chuck Schmidt for his service on our HPC. He and his family are moving, and so he is resigning from our HPC at the end of this year. Chuck has served as chair of our HPC for the last couple of years. During this time, our HPC has been extremely productive. One of their most interesting projects has been to create albums of several of Morris Township's historic neighborhoods, such as Washington Valley, Normandy Park, Prudentown. And I was happy to see when I was in Town Hall the other day, there was a display of one of those neighborhoods. This one, I believe, is Prudentown. I encourage everybody to take a look on the HPC page of the township's website. These albums are really interesting. And just a huge thanks to Chuck for his incredible contributions, and all the best to him and his family in the future. A quick comment on the Native American Heritage Month proclamation. I'm really glad that we passed this proclamation earlier this evening. I have always been fascinated by Native American history, which began more than 12,000 years ago when the first ancestors of present-day Native Americans came to what is now North, Central, and South America by way of a land bridge that connected Asia with present-day Alaska. To me, this is one of many chapters in our history that are worthy of ongoing study. And I encourage everyone to just keep that in mind. I also wanted to highlight tomorrow's Veterans Day, a time for remembering, in the words of Winston Churchill, never has so much been owed by so many to so few. And I encourage everyone to join us tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. for to honor our veterans and for the ceremony. And that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Mancuso.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to reiterate once again and thank Leslie Bensley for everything that she's done for our township during this period of time. I like her slogan of put Morris County on the map. I just think we can never thank her enough. And as I said earlier, I look forward to seeing her back in another project, which will be very, very beneficial for the town. I reiterate what my fellow committee people have said. Tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, we will be honoring veterans in Morris Township, and at 11, we'll be up on the green. I look forward to seeing as many of you as I can. My son is a very, very big Alaska fan. He's spent many a year up there. And I looked forward, and I was so glad that we passed that resolution tonight in recognition of them. Just a quick comment on Locust Street. I think there were 3 issues that I heard that I thought were very important. One of them was enforcement. Number 2 was safety. And number 3 was emergencies. Obviously, very concerned about the fire trucks coming out. But like in everything else, this is not going to just be done and forgotten about. We have our fire department, our police department, our engineers, all our experts will be looking at this thing once this goes into effect. And I think that will have some efficacy as far as where we're going to be down the road. Knowing I think it's going to work, but I think it'd be important that we continue to look at this. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ravitz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, and thank you to the members of the public in attendance for participating in your local government. Government works best when the public is informed and engaged. And thank you to all the people who voted in the election last week. Voting is a right, and casting your ballot is your voice in American democracy and in our future. And for my public commentary this evening, I'd like to touch on something that strikes me as a wonderful observation of what makes America, the country we all love, so great. Allow me to quote, "A person can move to France, but doesn't become a Frenchman." And this holds true for every nation that comes to mind, except for one, America. Anyone can come from any corner of the earth to America and become an American. The torch of the Statue of Liberty symbolizes our freedom and represents our heritage. It's the compact of our parents, our grandparents, and our ancestor. It is she who gives our great and special place in the world. For it is the great life force of each generation of new Americans that guarantees that America's triumph shall continue unsurpassed into the next century and beyond. Other countries may seek to compete with us, but in one vital area, as a beacon of freedom and opportunity that draws people of the world, no other country on earth even comes close. This, I believe, is one of America's most important sources of greatness. We lead the world because, unique among nations, we draw our people, our strength, from every country in every corner of the world. And by doing so, we continuously renew and enrich our nation. While other countries cling to the stale past, here in America, we breathe life into dreams. We create the future, and the world follows us into tomorrow. Thanks to each wave of new arrivals into this land of opportunity, we're a nation that is forever young, forever bursting with energy and new ideas, always on the cutting edge, always leading the world to the next frontier. This quality is vital to our future as a nation. If we ever close the door to new Americans, our leadership in the world would soon be lost. And I'd like to attribute those words to Ronald Reagan. It's especially noteworthy that this is Native American Heritage Month, and I just spoke about immigrants coming to the United States. As Ms. Wilson had said, let us not forget that the Native peoples, our ancestors, to them, we are the immigrants. Indigenous peoples inhabited this land long before any settlers and long before most of our ancestors ever arrived. It's important that we, the people, recognize and respect the customs and traditions of the indigenous peoples as part of the rich heritage of the greatness of America. And finally, keep in mind that disadvantaged people aren't looking for vengeance or retribution. They are looking for equal protections under the law. Equal protections for all of us does not infringe or diminish the rights of any of us. And let's have some empathy out there for our fellow citizens and our fellow humans. Let's not marginalize the people who have less political or economic power as some of us might now enjoy. Rather, let's face up to and stand up to those people who profit from our division. And as the mayor had said earlier tonight, we have more in common than can ever divide us. And to all the veterans who are out there, thank you for your service. That's it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Ravitz. I too would like to thank Steve Trachtenberg, Chuck Schmidt, and also Charlene Anderson, who have all submitted their letters of resignation for the various committees that they serve on. We should all be grateful for their service to the community while this governing body sits before you on a monthly basis, and we're the face of the community. We have a lot of supporting staff here at Town Hall, and also a lot of supporting committees that operate that help us do our jobs and help our community be a better place. And we should be thankful for all of the volunteers who volunteer for all of the committees. So again, thank you, Chuck, Steve, and Charlene for your service to the community. Mr. Ravitz just mentioned the election, and nobody has mentioned this yet tonight, but I would like to congratulate the man to my right, Deputy Mayor Gyorfy, on his re-election to the Township Committee. It is very well deserved. Tonight, everybody in the public got a glimpse of the good work that he does on this governing body, but also saw his volunteerism as a volunteer and a driver for our fire department. He's done a great job for all of us, and we are grateful for your service to the community, and so thankful that you're going to be rejoining the governing body next year. Congratulations to his running mate, Tara Lebo Moore, for her election to the governing body. These are the winners of the election, but really we as a community are winners of democracy here. We should be thankful for everybody who puts their name on the ballot. It is not easy at all running for office. We should be thankful that we live in a country where we have open and free elections, and that people step forward to run for those offices. And we are all winners because of that. So thank you to all the candidates who put their names on the ballot this last election season. I want to remind everybody that leaf season is ongoing. Leaves are still falling. Our DPW is doing the best it can to work their way around the town to collect the leaves. So I ask everybody to be a little bit patient. This time of year, leaves pile up quicker than we can get to them, but we promise that we will make the rounds and collect everybody's leaves. Again, be patient. Also like to mention Mr. Gyorfy, I think, is going to take some flack for this at the firehouse because he failed to mention about the upcoming Christmas tree sale at the Hillside Hose Fire Department. It is a great service that they provide. It not only is a local place where you can buy a Christmas tree, but it actually supports the community. It supports the firehouse. It supports all of the things that they do and give back to the community. And by buying your Christmas tree at the Hillside Hose Company, which is on Western Avenue, you yourself can give a little bit back to the community because they reinvest those funds in equipment and other community events. So I urge everybody to do that. The sale starts on November 26th. It's hard to believe Christmas is around the corner, but November 26th, which is the Friday after Thanksgiving. Is that correct?
Friday after Thanksgiving at around, it's not till the afternoon though, around 3 or 4 o'clock, I think, when our hours start. So
And then it runs every single day, right?
we'll run for the most part until we sell out.
Yeah. And they have a great selection of trees, all different sizes, all different types.
From with some insider information, the earlier the better this year for Christmas trees is what I will say. There is a nationwide shortage of trees, and we are not able to get as many as we normally do. As Greg, our IT manager, who's also a volunteer, says, we can make them shorter. We can't make them taller though. But definitely recommend folks who, if you're getting a tree this year, get them early.
Very good.
Hopefully, Mark, you'll sell out on day 2.
Yeah, maybe. And also around the corner is Thanksgiving. So I do want to wish a happy Thanksgiving to everybody in our community. And that wraps up my own personal remarks. So with that, we will get back to the agenda. Next on the agenda is the second public commentary section. For those of you who have been waiting to inquire or express a comment, now is the time. Everybody can start raising their hands and we will be happy to recognize you in order. Mr. O'Reilly. And as you get recognized, I'm going to ask everybody to state their name and their address for the record. So Mr. O'Reilly?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
James O'Reilly, 50 Independence Way. I was looking around for how to unmute, and then suddenly the window appears on the screen. Anyway, with regard to Ordinance 2721, you didn't state where this was. Is this in the former Honeywell property in the area that was going to be developed by Rockefeller Brothers until they bugged out?
Yes, it is an 81-acre parcel. That is the remaining portion of the development zone at the old Honeywell site. That was subdivided into a residential zone and the OL 40 office lab use zone that remains. And we are talking about the 81 acres that's remaining that has sat dormant for a number of years. I
was hoping for a public park, but anyway, that's not the zoning. Does it take up the whole area available?
You can, I suggest that you go online, like I stated before. A picture of the project proposal is on the township website. Well, it's actually on the Red Bulls website, and we link to the Red Bulls website. But if you go to the links that are available on the township website, you can see the project proposal, some of the background, as well as the frequently asked questions. So again, if you go to our homepage, go to the news highlights section at the bottom, you'll probably have to scroll to the right and look for that icon that shows the soccer field and click on that, and you will have the information you need, including the links.
Oh, okay, and it'll have their the meeting at the Governor Morris Hotel on the 17th there too, right?
That is not listed on our website. That is a private meeting. We're gonna post it up tomorrow. So now that it's official, we just got the official notice today. There actually is a flyer that I have here of the public meeting. We're gonna post that up tomorrow.
Okay, also 22121, you explained it, I think, that you had to cancel that. Now 222 and 226, is there any overall sewage greater plan here in these resolutions that these resolutions are part of, or is it just these particular projects?
I'm not sure I understand that question.
Well, you've got several sewage measures you're passing. Do they reflect an overall plan that they're part of, or are these just separate projects?
Well, we have an overall plan going into the year. We have the standing committees that I mentioned before that has oversight, and each of the department heads puts together a plan for the year. We lay out the capital expenditures as part of our budget. The laboratory was part of that capital expenditure. And that one's not going forward. But yes, they're all part of a plan. These are not generally one-off.
I think the one that Mr. O'Reilly is referring to, 226, after the treatment at the sewer treatment plant, it turns the sewage into sludge, and that is a contract that's being renewed, and that's for the sludge removal as part of the day-to-day operation of the sewer plants.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Just one question, Kathy Wilson.
Yes,
You said these interviews and applications, are these for professional positions or for like citizen volunteer positions or what?
for the Personnel Standing Committee.
I thought you were, yeah, because I didn't
Well,
know.
I talked about interviews for two different sources. One is for professional positions, which will be done through the Personnel Standing Committee. And the other is for people who have applied to be on our newly established Senior Citizens Advisory Committee. So two
Okay.
different sets of interviews.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Right. Thank you, Mr. O'Reilly.
Mary, you have Mrs. Barrett again.
Mrs. Barrett, we'll recognize you again. Betty, you can unmute yourself.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Can you state your name and address for the record again, please?
5 Loman Road. I drive through that Honeywell site on occasion, and there's a parcel of land which I don't think is included in the Red Bulls. It's over by, there's a brick building by the railroad tracks, and there's a parcel of land there. Do you know what if that could be used for open space? There doesn't seem to be any open space on the Honeywell site.
So,
And I thought,
right. So down by the gate
yeah,
near the train
where
tracks.
where that little brick building is.
Right. So we are right. So that old carriage house we're actually renovating to be a recreation department facility. That renovation is ongoing. And we are going to have a playing field adjacent to that. You can see the land has been flattened in that area.
Yes.
And we own the 15 acres in that area. So I think, I'm not sure. So we own those 15 acres adjacent to the train tracks down on the Madison Avenue side of the property. Those are township lands now.
Oh, I didn't know that. Well, I'm glad to hear that there will be something for the town. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
The next up we have Miss Lee. How are you?
Miss Lee?
Ping Lee. How are you?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, we can hear you. Can you state your name and address for the record, please?
Sure. This is actually Byron Chen. I'm Miss Lee's husband. I'm using her laptop. 3 Lee Drive, Columbia Park. So my comment is related to a question. I like that the rebel to come to here. But then related to that is that the lady before me just mentioned there's a parcel of land which was planned for junior soccer field. And if you calculate the distance between the two, somewhere around 500 feet. So that made me think that whether the planning board would reconsider that soccer field for junior. Instead, we probably can consider a park for senior people because there's going to be a senior center, right? Along the railway. And it is a popular trail running parallel to railway. If we could put a park there, it's a very nice place for people to take a break, chat with each other, and so forth. So that, Columbia Park can really have a park there. That's my question, that whether you would like to consider it.
So like we just stated, we have those 15 acres adjacent to what you refer to the traction line, which is the county trail. Yeah, and there's a nice walking trail that goes around Columbia Park that you can get to the traction line. And we do now have ownership of that carriage house building at the bottom, which I said we're renovating. I'm not sure that it's going to be used as a senior center, as you mentioned. We're still contemplating the use of that building and what actually is going to go in there. So that's still up for discussion. But we like your comment about providing a park for the community there. We'll take that into consideration to see where that might fit in.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Goldberg. You can unmute yourself.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening, we can hear you. Your name and address for the record, please.
Sure, Lee Goldberg, 10 Arrowhead Road. This is regarding 2721 for the Red Bulls initiative. I just have a question. Well, first of all, I just want to say how thankful I am for the Township Committee and the Townships bringing this sort of project to our attention, and also for the over communication here in this meeting tonight, and also the bullet points on the website sort of outlining the order of operations and how the meetings are going to sort of roll out. My question is, and I don't know if anyone on the Township Committee or maybe Mr. Carlson can answer this, but just so I understand the order of the process, the Planning Board on the 29th is going to do an amendment to the master plan and also review the master plan consistency, but that's going to come prior, if I understand this correctly, to the public having any chance to comment on the ordinance. And was just wondering if that was sort of out of, I mean, obviously it's got to be logical and legal and procedurally correct if this is how you're scheduling it, but can you just speak to that sort of timing, so to speak? Shouldn't the ordinance come first and then the amendment, or is there something maybe that's precluding that?
No, Mr. Goldberg, I'll explain. This is the typical way that this is done. So the master plan is the overall guidance document for the township in terms of planning. And ultimately, the ordinances that are adopted need to be consistent with the master plan. So it would be premature to move forward with the final hearing of the ordinance if the master plan does not reflect the zoning that is called for by the ordinance. So it's not atypical for the township council or committee, as we have here, to suggest a zoning change for the planning board to consider whether or not the master plan should be amended to accommodate that change, which is what is scheduled to be done. If the master plan is in fact amended, thereafter the board will consider whether or not the ordinance is consistent with that master plan change. Presumably it would be, at which time the ordinance would receive public hearing in front of the governing body. So this is the typical procedure in New Jersey.
Thank you for that clarification and explanation. Appreciate it. The only other question I have, is there any precedent for the Township Committee on such a large tract to do an ordinance like this? And has this been done before? Or, because I know as to Mr. Gyorfy's points, and this is not a redevelopment plan, so it's not following sort of the typical land use development or plan. So is there a precedent for the Township Committee doing this previously that anyone can think of?
The last time this happened was actually when the first portion of Honeywell was split apart. And those hearings were held and the zone got converted to allow residential. So it's a very similar process to that. All of Honeywell was zoned as OL40. It went before the planning board to allow for residential in those portions of the zone that now have residential. And a similar process is going to take place now that would allow the planning board is going to review the request to change the zoning to allow the proposal. And if it fits the master plan, they were going to amend it and then review the consistency of it. So it's a similar process to what happened about 10 years ago when the first portion of Honeywell got developed.
Okay. All right, thank you very much for that clarification. Yeah, my comment on the development is, I was thrilled and excited. I think I agree with a lot of the comments that I've read about from you, Mayor Grayzel, that this is probably the best use for that tract that we could see in terms of density and traffic, et cetera. So upon learning of the plan as a resident, I was, like many neighbors, thrilled and grateful to learn about it and excited about it. I will say, though, that was tempered a bit within 24 hours of learning exactly how fast and the processes that we're going to be done to sort of execute on this. I'm sure there's no knowns that are known to the Township Committee and the people that are the Red Bulls and Honeywell. There's knowns to us, the public. There's also unknowns to us, the public. But, 3 special meetings or 2 special meetings and all around in between the holidays for anyone who lived through what we call, I can guess, the first phase of Honeywell. The optics on that are certainly, I don't think, not lost on many in terms of just the brisk pace at which it's happening. So I'll just leave it at that. And again, but overall, thrilled to learn about the opportunity and the plan, and appreciate the over communication on it, and look forward to the upcoming meetings. Thank you.
Very good. And just to address your last comment, I mean, we're well aware of the timing, the end of the year, and such. There was a request from the Red Bulls because of timing of their other facilities. So there's timing issues on their end. There was also timing issues with buying a portion of the lot from Honeywell. Honeywell still owns one of those 2 lots. So there are a confluence of circumstances that brought us to this point to try to get this done this year. We'll go into more of that on December 2nd. Maybe the Red Bulls will go into some of that at their public meeting on the 17th. But again, this looks like a very good project for the township. We're happy to have the proposal, and we're sorry that it is a little bit rushed at the end of the year. But it's something that's really important for the municipality that we need to move forward on. Okay, next person in the line.
May I have motion to?
Is there one more person there?
No, that was Mr. Culbertson.
Very good.
Mayor, I'll motion to close the public comment.
We have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Very good. Thank you to those residents who stayed on to make inquiry. Next, we have considerations of monthly reports as circulated. Will somebody read those?
So moved.
Wait a second. And let me say that this will include the consent calendar. I think the consent calendar should come before the claims for payment. So we'll consideration of monthly reports on the consent calendar together. So can you move that again?
I will move the claims for payment and.
No, not the claims for payment, just the consideration of monthly reports on the consent calendar.
Consideration of monthly reports and consent calendar, Mayor.
Very good.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. And then claims for payment, list of bills and vouchers totaling $12,083,234.92. That number, again, I remind everybody, is large because we are the tax collector for the school district and the county and the library as well. And then we dole out those bills and vouchers to them. So that's why we have a $12 million number. We're not spending all of that money ourselves. Will somebody move claims for payment, please?
I will offer the bills and vouchers.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Gyorfy,
Yes.
Mr. Ravitz,
Yes.
Mr. Mancuso,
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson,
Yes.
Mayor Grayzel.
Yes. And before we adjourn this evening, again, thank you to everybody who participated. To remind everybody of the schedule, we spoke tonight about the Red Bulls public meeting next Wednesday, November 17th. Mark that date on your calendar if you're interested. November 29th is a planning board meeting where they're going to review the plan in consistency with the master plan. December 2nd is the next meeting of the Township Committee. That is a special meeting in regards to Ordinance 2721 related to the Red Bulls proposal. December 8th is another special meeting to continue the hearing on the Red Bulls. The 2nd and the 8th, we will only be discussing that ordinance. And then we are back here for our monthly meeting on Wednesday, December 15th, 2021 at 7 p.m. All of those meetings, believe, start at 7 p.m.
That's correct.
That I just mentioned. So we welcome the public to, again, participate. We welcome your comments and your questions. We hope to see you at a number of these upcoming meetings. So with that, I will ask for an adjournment.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Very good. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.